I was playing against, I think he's Dutch international master, Oscar Lemmers. And I was looking for a fight, obviously. But as soon as I started to play the game, I realized I'm asleep. I'm asleep, really. And sometimes this happens when you, I don't know, based on what, the previous day's activities, on the morning, on the sleep quality, but I was asleep the entire game. But still, I thought this was quite an interesting game to show to you. And my opponent, he plays all the time the Sicilian Alapin. And if you have been following some of my educational boot camps, then you probably remember I have done a topic about Sicilian Alapin. And recently in the written complete repertoire for Black, Lifetime Repertoires Con Sicilian, which we released for Chessable, I was recommending d5. d5 as a combative continuation. But during my preparation, I discovered that he goes for one continuation, which leads to really dry position. And sometimes there are positions where it's very difficult to get a fight. So I was looking, I'm browsing through potential continuations, how to get a fight in this game. I mean, before the actual game, I mean, I was using ChessBase, professional software for chess professionals, prepare for the game. So I decided to play knight f6, which is my main continuation, challenging the pawn on e4. So white really has to play e5, otherwise the inclusion of c3 to get a strong pawn center doesn't make sense. e5, knight e5. I know there's a number of ways how white can try to play out this position, and usually it's d4, but sometimes white can also start with something like knight f3. Let's say knight f3, and depending on then what black is going to do, play either d4 or bishop c4. F3 is not very good. Yeah, F3 is not very good because it doesn't allow the knight to be developed. Maybe knight c6, d5. You know, this looks like a very easy game for black. Think about most like d5. So you look at this position and it feels like white is playing some sort of a worse version of the French. So he'll have to play e5 and e5 and f4 later. So I think f3 is not very good. Then again, I don't see anything groundbreaking how to meet it. Maybe even e5. Yeah, e5 and d5. Not sure. Right. So e5 is the main move. Knight e5, and once again, I mean, I've seen various versions here how white can treat this position. For example, there's early bishop c4, knight b6, bishop b3. Typically, black plays c4, d6. All of this, I already talked in my bootcamp for the Sicilian Alapin. I don't remember the number, but you can check it out on my YouTube channel. So he played e4, c takes, and knight f3. So this is a very interesting order of the moves. Mainly, I guess the point is, after c takes on d4, I can play d6. And after knight f3, the most played move is knight c6, but recently I've got quite fond of d takes on e5, immediately clarifying the situation in the center. D takes, knight c6, bishop c4, knight b4, and black quite easily gets a good game. So the only worry for me before the game was, I mean, I'm not looking for equalization, I'm looking for a fight, right? So even if I get the equal position, I have to think, can I win this game later? So sometimes it's a good idea even deliberately accepting slightly worse position, but there's a big fight. So I played e6, and after bishop c4, yeah, there's also queen takes on the e4, which is not very dangerous. I just play e6, knight c6. As long as we get a different pawn structure, there's a potential to get a fight. Bishop c4, and now knight b6. I couldn't really remember. Maybe I should play d takes on e5. knight e5, e6, but I realized that after queen takes on d4, white's game is very simple. In the worst case scenario, he's simply gonna take on d5, create for me an isolated pawn, and despite the fact that I have two bishops, it's going to be incredibly difficult to win this. And if I play something like knight c6, well, then white has a very simple game once again. I'm not even sure if I managed to equalize the game. So I decided not to take on e5. First I include knight b6, and now the bishop has to retreat because white is not interested to give away this strong light square bishop for the knight on b6. So bishop b3 makes sense. This is a very common pawn sacrifice on c3. To be honest, I don't even know what's wrong with it. There should be something wrong, meaning like knight c3 and white gets an incredible lead in development. So he has 3 developed pieces. I have just 1 knight on b6, which is weird. So as a rule of thumb is normally black is not taking on c3, but instead he is developing his pieces. Now, my alternative to d takes on e5, what I played in the game, is also knight c6, develop a piece. I wasn't sure about that. Maybe I could have done it, by the way. Knight c6, he would probably take on d6, queen d6, short castle, bishop e6, and this is a major theory of the Sicilian Alapin, and I wasn't a big fan entered to something like this. Once again, I do equalize the game, but if I have to think how I'm gonna win this, it's quite difficult. So I decided to enter the following position. After knight b6, bishop b3, take on e5. Knight e5, so this bishop f7 needs to be dealt with. e6, c takes on d4, and knight c6. What's quite interesting, I knew this position after knight c6, b takes with a bishop on c4 and knight on d5. I knew this position, but I wasn't sure how this position is properly evaluated with bishop b3, knight b6 included. So it felt to be some sort of a concession. But then again, I thought, I can play some normal developing moves like bishop e7, knight c3, short castle, let's say bishop f4, maybe bishop a6, c5 at some point. So I felt, it should be okay. Maybe put the knight back on d5. And as long as we have a different pawn structure, there should be possibilities to outplay white. He played very quickly back, knight f3, and we enter the so-called IQP. What is an IQP? IQP is isolated queen's pawn's position. So white has an isolated pawn on d4, and we are trying to occupy the d5 square and trying to attack the pawn on d4. So there's the eternal question: is IQP strength or is it a weakness? And actually, I had 2 separate boot camps about it, 2 training camps, 2 training streams. Again, you can check it on YouTube. I was reviewing the possibilities from the black's perspective, how to play against the IQP. Also, I was following the most typical ideas from the white's perspective. That's a different boot camp. And this was one of my rare games from the black's perspective, playing against IQP. So that's why it was taking for me incredible amount of time to come up with the right setup. So bishop e7 makes sense. So when I'm looking for a fight against a weaker player, it means I'm looking for unbalanced pawn structures? Yes, among all other things. Absolutely. I'm looking for positions where it's not easy for the opponent to play. I'm looking for positions where he has to think a lot, where he has to make big decisions. So I cannot enter simple, equal, easy to play positions because I'm never gonna win those games. So that's why sometimes maybe I make moderate risks so that he gets confused, and even if I get the worst position, I can always escape. So that's the idea anyway. So bishop e7, knight c3, short castle. And of course, I make sure there's no d5, right? So if white would want to play d5, in order to get a very symmetrical pawn structure. Here, with the king in the center on e1, it's simply bishop b4 check, and the king is in danger. So despite the fact we have a symmetrical pawn structure with the king on e1, this is impossible. So after short castle, white obviously plays short castle, and now I was thinking what to do next, and I'm thinking how to block the d4 pawn, and I'm thinking knight b4, but I have some very bad memories from the boot camp, from the white's perspective, meaning I know all the typical plans for white, right? So I want to block the d5 square placement like bishop d7, bishop c6, rook c8, but for white it's very easy to play. So rook e1 is an easy move. Let's say I play knight e5 here, queen g4. So you start to see that suddenly white has quite a serious attack going, and all of these ideas are already mentioned in the bootcamp. So despite the fact that we have this very nice blockade on d5, the pawn on d4 appears to be very strong, and actually white has wonderful ideas how to organize this attack. Then I'm thinking, okay, I cannot really block it. Then I'm thinking, can I try to play knight e5? And this is also one of the ideas of the IQP, meaning I offer the opportunity for white to fix his pawn structure. But then again, I thought, I mean, even if the pawn structure gets very symmetrical, if I get a good piece development, I still should be quite happy. So if he plays something like knight e5, he takes on d5, of course the position is dead equal, but still, I mean, there's a lot of pieces on the board and possibilities to outplay the opponent. But after knight e5, what I couldn't understand, if he plays bishop e5 and queen b3. Although my gut instinct was saying this is not dangerous. I mean, I know typical positions after queen b3, for example, bishop e6, I just dropped the pawn on b7. The pawn on d5 is quite weak. I was thinking about bishop g4, counter-attacking the knight on f3, threatening with knight e4. Let's say he plays something like queen b7, then after rook c8, I would definitely go for this position. Because let's say he plays something ridiculous like bishop e3, I just take it, bishop d6, and there should be excellent chances to organize a kingside attack. And despite the fact that I'm down a pawn, I would say that white's position, especially with the queen locked out on b7, is very dangerous. So I was hoping for this. But if he will play knight e5, well, I figured it out with my minor lead in development and two bishops. There's never a risk for me, and maybe it's equal, but there's some dynamic chances. So all of this is great. But I realized he can play knight e5. And after knight e5, the point is, if I take it, I'm actually trying to make a draw here. So he has a very active knight on d5, bishop e3 is incoming. I didn't like this, not even mentioning the simple knight e7, queen e7. The position is so dead dry. I'm never gonna win this. So I thought, okay, I mean, what can I do after knight e5? Maybe something like bishop d6, but after bishop g5, the more I looked at this position, I realized there's never ever a scenario where I can win this. So maybe queen f5, bishop d2, queen d8, bishop g5, draw, right? So I wasn't sure. Okay, knight e5, maybe he wouldn't take on d5, but I felt that perhaps I need to include bishop f6 first. And now the point is, once again, he cannot play d5, because I take it, whatever he takes next, I'm not sure. Something like bishop f5, and white has some major problems with defending the b2 pawn, and rook b1 is impossible. So despite the fact that once again we have a symmetrical pawn structure, my bishops are monsters. So of course he wasn't doing that. He played bishop e3, and now I decided that this is probably a good moment to go knight e5, which maybe was not very accurate. I think I had to do knight e7, knight e4, and knight d5. And now the idea for me is to position the bishop on b7, which is one of the typical plans. Let's say knight f6, knight f6, something like bishop g5, b6. This is the kind of game I was looking for. So it's unbalanced. Let's say bishop f6, g takes, bishop e7, king h8, rook g8. There's definitely plenty of chances to outplay a weaker opposition. I mean, any opposition, not even a weaker opposition. So the game is dynamic, but I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the position, and although I had created this IQP bootcamp from both sides, like I already said, I was unfamiliar with the nuances. I didn't feel those details. So somehow combining together with my, I'm not sure, I guess, bad sleep from the previous night, it was pretty much like I'm a sleep princess the entire game. So I was just sitting at the board, sitting, and the time is ticking, and I'm looking at the clock, and I just cannot force myself to think. So knight e7 would be a very, very nice, unusual idea to get the bishop to b7, get a good game. But here I decided maybe this is a good moment to play knight e5, because I thought that if he's gonna take bishop d5, e takes, and now play queen b3, in the worst case scenario, I can play knight e7. So there's the difference why I included bishop f6, bishop e3, that I have now access to knight e7. To be honest, it felt I'm worse. It felt like I'm worse, but at least I finished my development. b6, bishop e6, slightly cramped, but I have many pieces on the board. And I thought, if he's gonna do this, I can consider to go here. At least I'm not immediately going for some very equalish, drawish endgames. Alternatively, I was also considering after bishop d5, e takes, queen b3, play the same idea of bishop g4, right? And now there's no knight e5 because I just take on f3, and usually this position, even if I don't win the pawn on d4, is an excellent long-term compensation. So white's king is always going to be weak. I don't care about the pawn on b7, I don't care about the pawn on b5. But again, there's a problem. He can play queen d5. And again, it leads to a lot of simplifications. So queen d5, I mean, what I'm gonna do here? Let's say bishop f3, queen f3, and there you go, right? Maybe actually I'm even worse. Knight e4, not even mention the simple take, queen b7, and this is not the fight that I'm looking for. It's too simple. So probably I would just play knight e7, accept slightly worse position, but at least there's a lot of pieces in play. But he didn't play it. He played very quickly knight e4. And now, after bishop e7, now this was quite a difficult maneuver for me to pick up. First, I play bishop f6, then I play knight e5, and then I go back bishop e7 to keep my dark square bishop alive. And that's why I was burning time every single move, 10, 15 minutes, trying to understand those nuances. And the last real chance I missed here to get a very good game is, I'm not even sure why I didn't think about it. It was knight a5 and b6. So naturally I cannot play b6 because the knight on c6 is under attack. But I can play knight a5. And after bishop c2, play b6. And for some reason, I didn't see this move at all. It makes perfect sense. I might even play bishop a6, rook c8. I have a perfect blockade on e5, and if he plays something like a knight e5, I play f5, right? I make sure there's no kingside attack, so this looks quite scary, right? So there's some amazing tactical ideas, either sacrifice on h7 or knight retreats, so I would have to create more weaknesses, or like h6 is bishop h6, looks incredibly dangerous, and g6 is weakening all the dark squares. So that's why after knight e5, I have to play f5. Push away the knight from the center, close the bishop on c2. So after something like knight c3, bishop b7, black has a rich game, exactly what I was looking for. So I missed this moment. Once again, I didn't understand it. Although now that I look at this, knight a5 is incredibly easy. After knight a5, bishop here, b6, knight e5, f. There's no b4. There's no b4 because the b4 square is protected by the bishop and the knight. There's no b4. You're welcome. Right. So I play queen b6. And you know the story about queen b6 is actually quite ridiculous because I know this maneuver from some other Alapin positions. I know this maneuver exists. So the idea is to play queen b6, rook d8, and apply pressure against the pawn on d4. So as soon as I saw queen b6, I thought, okay, I mean, this is looking great, right? I mean, queen b6, rook b8. I'm still offering him to take on d5. Maybe he's going to try to go for very simple positions. But then I get two bishops and a healthy development. So that was my thought process. But queen b6, it feels weird. It's weird because it's blocking the bishop to b7, so I will have eternal problems with the light square bishop. So if I would be able to remove these bishops from the board, black is doing excellent. But they're on the board. So after queen b6, he played knight c3, a move which I didn't even expect, because he just played knight e4, now he's going back knight c3. And again, I started to spend time like there's no tomorrow. And I couldn't understand, can I play knight e3? Knight e3, f takes on e3, and bishop d7. Finish my development. And keep the two bishops, maybe some chances at some point, play e5. But I just didn't like this position. And then when at home, I input this position on a chess engine, engine says bishop e8, it's great. You know, I look at this position, a kind of move like bishop e8, I would never be able to pick up. It just looks weird. And this knight on c5 is difficult to get rid of. So something like b6, the queen on b5 is a target for many tempos. So I'm not sure what white could even play here. Maybe something like rook c3, a general good move just to double the rooks just in case at the c file, protect the pawn on e3. And yeah, engine says queen b6, chill, it's equal. Yeah, I felt that this is a weird position, but then again, I didn't understand it. And now the more I look at this position, yeah, maybe actually engine is right, but it felt very committal, very committal. Yes, the rook at f8 is incredibly bad. So I was thinking about this knight e3, but no, I didn't like it. And of course, not knight c3. Not knight c3, because knight c3, b takes, this is a disaster for black. A complete disaster, because I give up the fight for the center. White's going to play c4. He has amazing bishops. And I am still struggling with my bishop on c8. Yeah. So I thought, okay, whatever. I wanted to play rook d8 anyway, and I decided to do it. And my point again was, if he's going to play knight e5, e takes, I'm doing great. And he plays queen e2, you know? And after queen e2, I was like, oh my goodness, I mean, what is my next move here? Because I cannot understand what I'm supposed to do next, because he has many easy moves like rook d1, h3, maybe at some point knight e5, maybe at some point take on d5. I cannot finish my development here. And if I play bishop d7, the pawn drops on d5. The queen is weird on b6. I'm no longer really pressing the pawn on d4. If I play knight e3, then the question is, why did I include rook d8? Now my king is actually quite vulnerable. Something like bishop d7, again knight a4. Now I'm not sure where to put the queen. Knight c5, bishop e8. Already I need to watch out for some sacrifices. Queen f2, queen g3, knight e5. You know, I look at this, and actually I like the rook of f8. It protects the king. And I'm not sure what I'm even doing there at the queen side. So it's, to get rid of this knight is not so easy. Let's say b6. Okay, maybe I can even lose the queen. a3 here, and could be some tactics. Ah, there's a fork. Okay, great. So not a great position to have. So I decided, okay, but I clearly messed it up, and I have to play now queen a5, because at least I can finish my development with bishop d7. I'm already, okay, listen, I'm ready to accept simply worse position, but as long as I get to finish development, maybe I'll get some chances. He took on e5. which is a fine move. E takes. But now, white missed a very nice way to secure some advantage. So white could have played bishop g5, which I didn't even see, to be honest. Unfortunately, I cannot remove the bishop or play f6 because this would further weaken this long diagonal. So my thought process was something along the lines of this. Takes, takes, a bishop f5. Feels okay. So I cannot really take on d4. I think that's a suicide. Something like queen h5. Here, this is lights out. All of my pieces are disconnected somewhere at the queen side. So the king is left alone. So I thought, okay, bishop f5 is good, right? I can play bishop g6. Maybe knight e4 is a big idea. And there you go. Boom, knight f7. What about this move? Knight f7 is quite an amazing discovery by an engine. And the point is, king f7, rook c5. And suddenly white starts a very strong attack. So, queen b4, I guess. I mean, the queen is under attack. I need to remove it somewhere. Also, there's a queen f3 threat at some point, pinning the bishop, threatening to play g4. And now, this is probably the most human move. Rook d5, bishop d5. My king goes somewhere away, I'm not sure where. Take it, queen f3, g4. Maybe black survives this, but it's a very unpleasant defense. Alternatively, I can show you one engine's continuation, which is not very human. Bishop d5. Take it, g6, and rook e1 is a normal move, but after knight e4, somehow black's position is holding together. There's no points of penetration. Queen d1, knight c6, and a3. Don't ask me why. Put the queen on b2, and after queen f3, white is supposedly better. You know, I don't understand this. It's not very obvious, so a human mind doesn't think like that. So I think a human would just play rook d5, bishop d5, queen f3, and just get a better position. So this is the move that white missed. And this shot of knight f7 is not very obvious. Yeah, maybe there was a queen c7 idea as well. I'm not really sure. Bishop g5, takes, takes, bishop f5, takes, takes, rook d5, rook c5, queen c7. I guess queen f3 looks good. Queen f3, g6, g4, right? So white keeps the attack, and I'm not threatened to play knight e4 because the queen on c7 is under attack. So there's some downside of having this the queen on the secure c7 square as well. So what happened? He played bishop d2, and I cannot really play queen c7 because this is such a terrible pin. So think about moves like knight e5. Looks incredibly risky. Bishop e6. I mean, take on c6. White is definitely pushing. And also I cannot play queen b6 because this nice shot. Boom. Rook c6, and the bishop on e7 is hanging. I cannot protect it. So the only move I felt is bishop b4. And now I had to make sure there's no rook c5. Very nice shot. And after rook c5, obviously I cannot take on c5. My queen is under attack. I cannot play queen b6. There's rook b5. And I'm losing. But it was very important to see from afar. I have this move, knight e4. Intermezzo move. Removing the protection for the rook on c5. And now, white is just losing. Knight e4 is queen c5. Or rook a5 is just knight e2. And just take on a5. That's it. So, this was important to see. And any other tricks for white, like rook e1, threatening with a mate, there's bishop g4. And again, I had to make sure at any given moment there's no rook c5. Right? Rook c5 with the same trick that The queen cannot go to b6, there's rook b5. Again, I have to make sure that after any rook c5, there's going to be knight e4. Specifically here, I think it's at least even this. Takes, g takes, queen b6, rook b5, and queen d4. Among of all other choices, now this is an option which was not available before because we eliminated the knight from f3. So white decided to take on b4, queen b4, queen d3, and now I made another mistake. I mean, unbelievable how many mistakes I made in this game. So, like I said, I was asleep the entire game. I played g6. I played it very fast, by the way. g6 with the idea to play bishop f5, bishop e4, try to get to the pawn on d4, maybe make a window for the king just in case. But, I mean, when you look with a with a naked eye on the position, you realize that the king is quite weak. I mean, the dark squares are quite weak. So, hello, chess master. So the right continuation was bishop g4, which is a very easy move, by the way. And if he plays now something like knight g5, then g6. And this is super easy. The pawn on d4 is under attack. So something like rook c5, queen d4, rook d5. The position is, oh, sorry, queen d4 first, and then rook d5, and then it's just an equal position. Or maybe bishop d5 first. Yeah, bishop d5, I guess. And he would have to pick up, actually, the most precise a3. a3, queen d6, knight g5, queen g6, take it, rook c5, and bishop e6. And even if I'm slightly worse, there's definitely chances to play. Let's say knight e6, f takes on e6, bring the king here, rook on d6, slowly, carefully, try to play on. But I guess I'm simply worse, slightly. What I did, I played g6. And after g6, rook c5 is a very logical move. Bishop f5, and now my opponent missed a very nice idea. He played queen c3, which is a very secure move, but queen a3 was a very beautiful, logical idea. Makes sense, of course, to go queen h6 and knight g5, try to checkmate, thanks to my careless move g6. And now, bishop e4 is a very critical line. Now check out this line. On bishop e4, I try to remove the defender from the pawn on d4. Knight g5, queen d4. So it seems that black is doing great. There's no mate. Boom. Again. So knight f7. If I take on e3, f takes on e3, the rook on f1 protects the f7. So I take it. Rook c6. So white removes the defender from d4. I have no time to take the rook. This is a discovered check. And after king e7, rook c7, rook d7, clearly I'm on the defensive. So maybe something like rook f7 takes here, king e6, not sure which pawn, take it. Maybe because of the piece activity, black is able to show to save the game, but it's going to be quite an unpleasant defense. Yeah, actually here black already is down 2 pawns, but we have quite a lot of activity, so maybe it's possible to win back 1 pawn, but not clearly the second pawn. So this was a very nice possibility for white to punish black for the chosen move g6. Now instead he played queen c3. And now queen c3 comes with the hidden threat of rook c6. So I cannot play bishop e4. Now the queen on b4 no longer is protected, and queen c3 is just rook c3. Nice trick. So I have to take it, and now b takes on c3. So clearly white is pressing and applying some pressure on the pawn on d5, and I was very, very unhappy when I realized I cannot play knight e7, because this was my initial idea. Play knight e7, play rook c8, b6, and just have an equal endgame with chances to outplay the opponent because we have slightly different pawn structure. And actually rook c7 is rook d7, this is just good for black. And a chance again, once again, to outplay the opponent in the end game. But after knight e7, there's one major problem. White can play rook e1, and after rook e1, there's no rook d7, bishop a4. Clearly, my pieces are overloaded. I cannot keep the knight on e7 protected. There's no rook c7. Very annoying move, bishop a4. I thought about king f8, and now I see the downside of including g6 earlier. Now there's knight g5 and knight h7. So I tried to calculate this line. f6, knight h7, king f7. And I'm trying to guess, can I try ever capture the knight on h7? And I'm calculating and calculating and calculating. And the more I calculate, I realize the knight still remains on h7. So that's where kicks the logic that if you cannot win the knight immediately, probably you're never going to win this. So for example, after c4, white includes the bishop on b3, knight g8. I'm trying to capture the knight with king g7, check, take it. All of this is very logical. King g7, rook c1. I have no time to take the knight on h7. There's going to be rook d7, rook c7, and bishop a4. The bishop on d7, thanks to the pin, will be lost. So I guess rook d8, bishop a4. And I'm not sure. Can I win this actually? Probably not. Rook f7, takes, rook c7, knight e7, rook b7. The more we continue, more moves are being made. You see, the knight still remains on h7. So I simply dropped this. I didn't see all of this, this entire long line, but I realized that even if I drop the pawn on h7, and I sort of hope that the knight will be dropped at some point later, I realized this is not a smart strategy. So I cannot simply go here at all. And then I'm thinking, okay, what can I do next? Bishop e6 is a very solid move, but it's also a passive move. Hello, F. Good morning. And I'm thinking actually about this move, rook c8. Can I try to sacrifice the pawn on d5? And I really, really wanted to make this move. And if he plays bishop d5, there's very nice shot knight e4. I have intermezzo ideas on either f3 or e2. C takes, take it. He's probably going to take the pawn on f7. D takes, king f6. And I thought because of my amazing piece activity, rook d3, rook a3, the king is dominating the knight on f3. There's no danger. There's no danger. I can definitely try to outplay my opponent here. But there's one problem with the entire approach. I saw this. I was very excited. He can take with the rook. Yeah. And now I have to take. I have to play knight e7. And this, there's no way ever I'm going to win this. Actually, I'm the one who is suffering. So rook c8. This is quite forced line. Engine, by the way, says it's a draw. But, you know, okay, so be it, right? It's a draw, but like I'm looking for a fight here. And maybe this is going to be a draw, maybe it's not going to be a draw. To be honest, it's not very obvious to me why this should be a draw. Because white has risk-free game, tried to play for the win. So I realized, okay, I cannot play rook c8. What can I do? So I played bishop e6, the only move, which is left. So white played bishop a4, of course. Otherwise, I'm about to play something like rook d6, b6, knight e7, and slowly push away the rook from c5 and try to get to the weakness on c3. And here I had a very nice idea once again in my mind. I wanted to do this. And if he plays bishop c6, b6. Very nice. So this was the trick I wanted to use, so he cannot keep the rook on c5, and after rook b5, rook c6, I just tricked him, created the weakness on c3, and I am taking over the game. And something like this, boom, 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 boom. I thought, okay, there's definitely chances to outplay the opponent. So I saw that, I was very excited, And then I realized, white doesn't have to do this. He plays rook b1. And again, it's very difficult to protect the pawn on b7. So rook c7, knight e5 is a nightmare, right? So I have so many pins. White is about to take on c6, create a bad bishop on c6. There's a raid? Who is raiding us? I didn't see any raid. Hello, Proclada. Hello. So what I could do? I mean, in the end, I had only one move here, rook d6. Nothing else, really. And after rook d6, bishop c6, my opponent offered a draw. So what can I do? I mean, there is no chance. I can even try to play this for the win, so I agreed. Because after rook c6, b takes, rook b1, I don't get to take over the b file just in time. I can play rook c8, rook b7, and now I wasn't sure, do I have to include a5 or not? So for example, I was thinking about this, c5, rook a7, c takes, knight e4, rook c3, something like h3, and trying to evaluate how easy is it to make a draw here, right? My king is cut off, and this is a very annoying problem. a4, a5, a6, this could be a problem. So clearly, despite the fact the position is equal, I'm still clearly on the defensive. So actually, I think after rook b7, I was thinking that probably I have to include a5. Force him to go here and then play c5. So we could get something like this. C takes, knight e4, rook c3, and now he has some background issues, and I'm just in time to play king g7. Let's say take it, check, king f6, take it, and whatever, let's say rook a3. No, black is not winning. Black is making a draw. So there's nothing I could do. So yeah, he offered me a draw. I agreed. I was not very happy about it, but what can I do, right? I mean, made so many mistakes. And after actually this bishop a4, I was having also this idea to play b6, which is a ridiculous idea. But the point is, I was hoping that after rook c6, bishop d7, he goes away with the rook. Now that would be really nice, right? Nice way to trick the opponent into a favorable trade. Of course, he doesn't have to go away. He just plays knight e5 and gets two minor pieces for the rook, and black is just busted. So I'm gonna do that. So, I mean, all in all, it was a very nice game. Alapin itself has a reputation of being quite drawish. So if white doesn't really want a big fight, it's very difficult. It's very difficult for black to go for a big fight. And again, I'm not going to show you a line where I found this equalizing line. Not equalizing, but drawish line after d5. He had already played it once. So I thought, okay, whatever, maybe it's going to be equalish, but the best scenario I can try to get is this IQP position. Of course, knight c6 is also a playable move, but I missed two chances really. So first chance number one was understand this idea of knight e7, knight e4, knight d5, put the bishop on b7, give away the bishop on f6. No, Alapin is not an attacking line. I mean, at a good level, it's not an attacking line. I mean, that's my belief, to be honest. I mean, it's an interesting opening, but it's very often quite dry. And the second option I missed was after this unexpected slight inaccuracy for white knight e4, which is not a good move. I think he should have played something else like rook c1 or bishop d5, maybe bishop d5, by the way. Bishop d5, queen b3 made perfect sense. After knight e4, I missed my second chance. Bishop e7, rook c1, b6. I'm sorry, not b6, but knight f5. Knight f5. Push away the bishop and then play b6. This was the second chance that I missed. So, I mean, anyway, the game was perhaps not very exciting. It was quite equalish, so I played a draw. In the end, our team, Mulheim Nord, we managed to beat opposing team Aachener convincingly, 5.5 points against 2.5 points. So a draw